But a question that we often get asked is, what is the cheapest clay? The answer to that is very simple. The cheapest clay is the one that is flying through the air. A lot of people look for cheap clays, particularly imports, and they buy them because they're cheaper. But if you get 10% breakages, they're 10% dearer. And people do tend to forget that. Also, when you get a batch of clays, because they're cheap, they break, they do tend to cut up the rubbers on the trap, which then makes it even worse. So not only do you have problems with your clays, you then have to replace the rubbers on the trap. So the cheapest clay is the one that is flying through the air. Here we tend to use CCI clays because we find that they are probably the best value for money that you can get. Their clays come in all sorts of variations. You have a standard clay, which is a standard black clay. You then have a midi, which, as you can see, is about a third smaller than a standard. You then have a mini, as you can see, again, very, very small. So that's your three sort of standard clays that you get. You then have a rabbit, and a rabbit is exactly what it says. It's nice and thick, and it's made so that it rolls along the round. Our Browning Rabbit Mania is now quite internationally famous, and that's the clay that we use for the Browning Rabbit Mania. We then have a battue. A battue is a clay that's used mainly in FITAS shooting, but in the last few years it's been quite popular in the UK. A battue is a very unusual clay. When the battue is that way up with the hollow underneath it, it flies through the air and then it tends to twist and drop. Okay? If you put a battue in the trap the other way up, because it's got nothing underneath to keep it up, it tends to come out like that. So again, a battue is used by course setters as an interesting target. You then have variations in colours. So if you have a bad background, you can get varying colours. You get a yellow, which for obvious reasons you can see a lot better. You then get pink, which again you can use in varying backgrounds. You then get orange. Again, most trap disciplines now are shooting orange clays, but they're being used more and more in sporting so that you can get a better view of the clay. This particular orange one was made for shoot-offs on the Olympic disciplines. And what happens is you've got this disc here, and inside that is orange paint powder, I'll say. When the clay is hit, it explodes. And these clays were developed for things, particularly for double trap, so when you had a shoot-off, it could be televised. So they are very, very expensive, but they come out ideal on the television. A good course setter can make clays do different things. A standard black clay is just a standard black clay. But if you tip the trap on its side, then the clay comes off like that and makes it more of a looper. So if you want to put a target on so you see the whole of the face of the clay, if you tip your trap up sideways, then when the clay comes out, instead of coming out dead flat, it comes out at that sort of an angle. So again, instead of flying through the air like that, it will tend to be a little bit more of a looper. So you can set loopers up with standard clay. You can set a looper up with a MIDI. Again, a lot smaller, but if you want to set it up so that it is more obvious, then you can put a tilt on the trap, which will show you more of the face of the clay. MIDIs always used to be used a lot when we had manual traps. Now nearly everybody's gone away to auto traps. MIDIs have been used less, but there are more people now that build automatic traps to take MIDIs. And again, a MIDI can be quite deceptive because it's smaller, it actually looks as though it's further away. Because it doesn't have the weight of a standard, MIDIs do tend to come off the arm fairly quickly because they're lighter, but they die off a bit quicker. So again, it's used to confuse the shooter. A mini, if you get a decent course setter that knows how to use a mini, it's a very, very good target. You get sort of club people put them up, and they think it's great fun to put a mini on at 40 yards and nobody can hit them. Actually, probably the most famous mini in the world was at Holland and Holland. When you did a flush at Holland and Holland, you did 100 bird flush, and the last bird to come out was always a mini. And he was in the days where you had manual trappers up there, not automatic traps. And the last target, the trapper used to call snipe and throw one mini off the top of the tower, which always caused a lot of amusement. If you use a mini as a sensible target and don't put it miles away, it's quite an interesting target because it's a little bit different. Okay? Again, a rabbit. When you set a rabbit trap up, you must make sure that the trap is level because rabbits tend to be gravity fed onto the arm. So if you don't get the trap dead level, then the clay lays over like that and doesn't roll down the arm properly. On occasions, it pays you just to tweak the trap a little bit. If you look down the chute from the back, you can see which way the clay wants to go. So you can put a fraction of a tweak on it. Sometimes that will make it run better. Now also, when you set a rabbit trap up, as the rabbit comes off the arm, it should be dead level with the ground. If it hits the ground too hard, it jumps. If it's too far above the ground, again, it hits the ground and bounces. So if you get a rabbit that isn't going dead flat, it's because it hasn't been set up to hit the ground dead flat. An experienced shooter will almost immediately see what clay it is that is being used and will know how to cope with it. So again, it's like when we're teaching people to shoot, it's concentrate on the target. If the target is slightly different, then you need to think, why is it slightly different? And it might be a MIDI instead of a standard. Always pays when you go onto a stand, if you're not sure, ask. That looks a long way. Is that a MIDI or a standard? No, it's a MIDI. So it's not as far away as it looks. So it pays you to know what target you're shooting at.